In 2003, I actually had lunch with one of the other co-founders of the company, Reusable, who was actually working, I think, on like a hydrogen airplane or something. He mentioned to me the T0 car that was done by AC Propulsion. AC Propulsion, I think, consists of guys, some of whom had actually been on the EV1 program, and they took a gasoline sports car, kind of a kit car, and outfitted it with lithium-ion batteries, sort of consumer-grade cells, and they created a car which is essentially the precursor of the Roadster. There was a fair bit of work that was required, and but anyway, I kept trying to get AC Propulsion to commercialize the T0, and I said, look, I'll fund the whole effort. You really need to do this, and they just sort of refused to do it. So anyway, so AC Propulsion finally said, okay. I actually told AC Propulsion, look, if you're not going to do this, I'm going to create a company to do this. And they said, well, there's some other guys who are also interested in doing that, and you guys should combine efforts and create a company. And that's basically how Tesla came together. If you have an engine failure or some huge failure right above the launch pad, and the whole thing can come down with about 1 million pounds of TNT equivalent and destroy the whole launch pad, that would be bad. That's what's going through my mind, in case you're wondering. That's actually what I'm thinking about. Well, Peter's been a big supporter, actually. So he invested in SpaceX at a very important time in 2008, before we reached orbit. So after our third failure, but before our first success. So big credit to Peter and Luke Nosek and the other guys at Founders Fund. Basically, my buddies from PayPal. My buddies from PayPal saved my butt. It was really, really good. What I find is that I'm able to be with them and still be on email, because they don't need constant interaction except when we're talking directly. So in the absence of that, I would not be able to get my job done. But I really, the idea of being CEO of 2 startups at the same time was not appealing, and shouldn't be appealing, by the way, if anyone's thinking. Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or how many hours?
I was working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
You ever worry about yourself imploding? It's just too much?
Absolutely. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. It hurts. This is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then Tesla, good chance Tesla would die.
Do you believe in God?
I believe there's some explanation for this universe, which you might call God. These things that the last few years have been really, really great, but then there were a number of years that sucked horribly, and I'd like to just not have it be so extreme. And last year was a year of great achievement, but honestly, I didn't have that much fun. It sucked. I didn't have that much fun. My New Year's resolution was to have a little bit more fun this year. So hey, I'm at South by Southwest,
There are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that, because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Well, at SpaceX, almost all my time is spent on engineering and design. It's probably 80 or 90%. And then Gwyn Shotwell, who's president and chief operating officer, takes care of the business operations of the company, which is what allows me to do that. Yeah, I think in order to make the right decisions, you have to understand something. And if you don't understand something at a detailed level, you cannot make a good decision. But I'd like to just point out, like, what you saw there is a result of an incredible team at SpaceX, super talented people who really work like crazy to make that happen. I think my role is to make sure that they have an environment where they can really, where the talents can really come to the fore, but I can't tell you how honored and grateful I am to work with such a great team. We almost did die at SpaceX, actually. So I budgeted for 3 flights. Technically, I did have a plan where I had the money from PayPal. I had like about 180 million from PayPal. And I thought, I'll allocate half of that to SpaceX and Tesla and Solar City, and that should be fine. I'll have 90 million. Like, it's just lots, But then what happened is things cost more and took longer than I thought. So I had a choice of either put the rest of the money in or the companies are going to die. And it's like, so I ended up putting all the money in and borrowing money for rent from friends. 2008 was brutal. 2008 we had the 3rd consecutive failure of the Falcon 1 rocket for SpaceX. Tesla almost went bankrupt. We closed our financing round 6 p.m. Christmas Eve 2008. It was the last hour of the last day that it was possible. Yeah, SpaceX is alive by the skin of its teeth, so is Tesla. If things had just gone a little bit the other way, both companies would be dead. And I like, one of the most difficult choices I have ever faced in life was in 2008. I think I had maybe $30 million left, or $30 or $40 million left in 2008. And I had 2 choices. I could put it all into one company, and then the other company would definitely die, or split it between the 2 companies. But if I split it between the 2 companies, then both might die. When you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something, and building something, it's like a child. And so it's like, which one am I going to let one starve to death? I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I split the money between the 2. Fortunately, thank goodness, they both came through. It's not because of some epiphany that I had one day driving down the 405. That's how it gets translated somehow. I was talking about tunnels for years and years. For probably 5 years or 4 years at least, whenever I'd give a talk and people would ask me about what opportunities do you see in the world, I'd say tunnels. Can someone please build tunnels? So after 4 or 5 years of begging people to build tunnels, and still no tunnels, I was like, okay, I want to build a tunnel. So like, maybe I'm missing something here. So I was like basically talking people's ears off for tunnels for several years, and then said, well, let's find out what it takes to build a tunnel. And so I started digging a tunnel. I wanted to start the tunnel from where I could see it from my office at SpaceX. So I said, well, let's just carve off a part of the parking lot across the road so I can see if anything's happening or not. And then we named our first boring machine Godot, because I kept waiting for it. It never came. Finally it did. And we got it going. And now we're making good progress. We're funding the company for merchandise sales. So thank you for anyone who's bought our flamethrower.
Jesus. Preposterous.
That is awesome. Dangerous to eyebrows.
Jesus.
We've added seats.
I mean, overall, I think I'm pretty happy with what where things are. It's hard not to be, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be, yeah. Yeah, things are in a good place right now, and I mean, I'd like to, looking ahead, I'd like to see humanity go beyond Earth and have people on Mars. That would be really great. And to see widespread adoption of electric vehicles and renewable energy. These are great things. And yeah, I think those would be really cool.
You are, as you well know, a controversial guy as well.
I try not to be controversial,
I know
but
you
it
don't,
seems
but you're aware
controversy
of
seems
it.
to find me.
It finds you. It finds you because you think big. You're a software guy who has been successful in the private sector.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and see no reason you can't do things that other people have not been able to do, no matter how large the corporate enterprise. Create the best electric car, or B, put privately astronauts in space,
Right.
which you say you will do in 2 years.
Well, yeah. It sort of depends on when NASA asks us to do that.
Elon, in 2002, when you started SpaceX, many in the aerospace industry didn't take SpaceX seriously. You remember what that felt like. Yet here you are, you just sent 2 astronauts in a car made by your car company to Launchpad 39A with a spacecraft made by your space company. And now they're launching the International Space Station. So I'm wondering, for you, in this moment, do you just pinch yourself thinking,
Yeah.
is this really happening?
This is a dream come true, I think, for me and everyone at SpaceX. This is not something that I ever thought would actually happen. So when starting SpaceX in 2002, I really did not think this day would occur. I expected 90% chance we'd fail to even get to low Earth orbit with a small rocket. So if somebody told me in 2002 that I'd be standing here with the NASA administrator, meeting the astronauts, and we've got a rocket and spacecraft on pad 39A, the best pad in the world, which is, it's an honor to be there, I would have thought, man, I don't know what you're smoking, but it's not. like no way is that true. You know, nobody's CEO of a company forever. I mean, eventually, you know, they carry you out. You know, a friend asked me at a party, hey, what are you going to call a third generation car? I was like, well, we've got the S and the X, we might as well make it the E, you know. And then it kind of stuck, even though we're just kidding. And then just to sort of add to it, we also just for laughs trademarked the Model Y. But I guess things are pretty dry in the trademark world, so nobody picked up on that. And anyway, then Ford gave us a call and said they were going to sue us for using Model E. And we're like, okay, like Ford's killing sex. I mean, that's...
There have been setbacks.
We had maybe about a week's worth of cash in the bank, or less.
He saved the company in its darkest hour.
And yes, he's controversial.
This is... Take all of my reserve capital and invest it into Tesla, which was very scary because, you know, it would obviously be quite sad to have the fruits of my labor with Zip2 and PayPal not amount to anything. But there was no question that I would do that in my own mind because Tesla was too important to let die. I'm available 24/7 to help solve issues.
Right.
Call me 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, I don't care.
We had to go in and make some really hard decisions on personnel changes, and Elon really had to dedicate his time to the company.
I want names named. So if someone's always on the hot seat and is always the root cause for problems, they will not be part of this organization long term. It's not okay to be unhappy and part of this company. And so if somebody can't get happy, get divorced.
Right. Musk and his...
So that was just a very important moment. Really the key thing with Daimler was to demonstrate hardware that worked.
You know, if they can't touch it, they can't drive it, it's not particularly line.
The Daimler executives arrived not at all convinced that it made any sense to work with an American car company, let alone a little tiny American car company in Silicon Valley. That we would have the worst economic climate since the Great Depression, and one which was disproportionately bad for cars. I mean, General Motors went bankrupt. I mean, General effing Motors, you know?
Musk was in the fight of his life.
We had maybe about a week's worth of cash in the bank, or less, and there was just very little time left in the year to resolve these things. I mean, there were like 2 or 3 business days left in the year. I never thought it was possible for me to have a nervous breakdown, but if it was possible for me to have a nervous breakdown, that was about as close as I was going to come. Right now we interact with computers in a very unnatural sort of 2D way. And we're trying to create these 3D objects using a variety of 2D tools. And it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel normal the way you should do things. So we started playing around with the idea and using a few of the things that are available out there, such as the Leap Motion and Siemens NX, which is what we used to design the rocket. And we wrote some code to kind of integrate the two. And we started off with what you see here, which is a wireframe of the Merlin rocket engine. And what I can do is I can go and grab it, and I can rotate it in multiple dimensions. And then what I can do is I can put another hand in there, and I can zoom, or I can zoom in and out on the wireframe. And then I can also translate it. So I can move it around the screen, and then zoom and translate. And this is what we started off with a few months ago. And then you can also spin it, and then catch it. So this is kind of a fun way to interface with what is really a very complex model. Now we'll go from this to what we're able to advance to a few weeks after the wireframe, which is to actually use a full 3D CAD model of the engine. So here what you're seeing is the actual interaction with the CAD software manipulating the real 3D model of the Merlin engine just using hand gestures. If you can just go in there and do what you need to do, just understanding the fundamentals of how the thing should work, as opposed to figure out how to make the computer make it work, then you can achieve a lot more in a lot shorter period of time. So then we went to a 3D projection. We started off with the kind of 3D projection that you're familiar with in the movies, where you use 3D glasses. We also did a freestanding glass projection, which is the sort of technology that was used in the Iron Man movies. And then finally we used the Oculus Rift, which is immersive virtual reality that actually tracks your head position, and you really are moving around the object. It feels like it's right there in front of you. Now let's use this for an actual component on the rocket, which is a cryogenic valve housing. You can really apply your intuition and take something from your mind to a physical object with far greater ease than we currently do. Now that we've gotten the object out of our head and into the computer, how do we get it out of the computer and into reality? So we're actually going to print this with a 3D laser metal printer. So the way that the 3D printer works is it lays down fine particles of either titanium or Inconel, and then it goes over it with a laser and melts those tiny particles onto the prior layer. So it builds it up like just layer by layer. So I believe we're on the verge of a major breakthrough in design and manufacturing, in being able to take the concept of something from your mind, translate that into
a 3D object really intuitively on the computer, and then take that virtual 3D object and be able to make it real just by printing it. So it's going to revolutionize design and manufacturing in the 21st.
You like it, Cole?
I sleep on the couch over there.
So you're just laying here on the couch?
Yeah. Last time I was here, I actually slept literally on the floor because the couch was too narrow.
Yeah, I was going to say. And Elon, I have to say, it's not even a comfortable couch either.
No, it's terrible. This is not a good couch.
When you dream about space businesses, what do you see as possible 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, as viable space businesses that it's hard for us to see because they're not there?
You know, you have the obvious existing business of satellites of one kind or another, which I think with an improvement in space transportation costs will enjoy an increase in the business, but modest. And then I think you've got space tourism or space adventure, whatever you want to call it. That I think is likely to be the biggest driver. And then long term, I think you've got, assuming that we fulfill the president's vision and we establish a moon base and then go on and establish a Mars base, I think supplying those bases is a huge, huge business.
How does what you're doing help NASA accomplish its goals? Because NASA wants to set bigger goals.
Well, I think fundamentally the way we help NASA is by lowering the cost of access to space, allowing us to do more interesting things for a given budget. In fact, I think what we're doing is critical to the future of NASA. At the current prices that NASA pays for space transportation, I don't think we'll be able to achieve anything interesting in space. Well, for version 1 of the device, it would be basically implanted in your skull. So, but it would be flush with your skull. So you basically take out a chunk of skull, put the Neuralink device in there. You put the electrode, you'd insert the electrode threads very carefully into the brain, and then you stitch it up, and you wouldn't even know that somebody has it. So then it can interface basically anywhere in your brain. So it could be something that helps cure, say, eyesight, like returns your eyesight, even if you've lost your optic nerve type of thing.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Hearing, obviously. It could, in principle, fix almost anything that is wrong with the brain. Well, that would really inspire the public, and if the public got inspired about sending life to Mars, then they would tell their senators and congressmen to appropriate more money for NASA so that we could do that. So my initial goal was actually just to increase NASA's budget. And then what I found was that, first of all, the Russians really wanted to charge me way more than I could afford. They wanted to charge me more money than I had to do the philanthropic mission. And so that was ended up not really being an option. And I thought, well, is there any way to make a lower cost and especially a reusable rocket system in the U.S.? And so I just read every book I possibly could on rocket engineering and decided to try giving it a go. Essentially to give NASA more options, more sort of technology, like more technology horses in the stable, essentially, to use in order to get humanity into space and become a multi-planet species.
NASA is a customer, and as a customer, we become one of many that will be using this crew vehicle if all goes according to plan, and we'll have a robust commercial marketplace for spaceflight, and that commercial marketplace could be sovereign countries, it could be individuals that want to go maybe on vacation to space, which I know sounds crazy, but I'll tell you, and you know this, those folks are out there, and there's a lot of folks that are ready to do it. Of course, they have the same dreams and ambitions that all of you had when you were coming up, so it's an exciting time.
I think this is a good step. It really is getting people back in orbit.
Yeah.
It's a step towards ultimately. I mean, what I really want to see is, permanent base on the moon, permanently occupied human base on the moon, and us building a city on Mars. That's if I can see the beginning of that before I die, I'll die happy.
Well, the president's first space policy directive to me was go to the moon, And the word in there is sustainably. So how do we go? We don't want to recreate the Apollo program.
Exactly.
We don't want to leave flags and footprints and not go back. We want to go and we want to stay. And this time, that means landers, rovers, robots, and humans in a sustainable return. It doesn't mean at this point we're ready to have, as you mentioned, a city on the moon. But what it means is we can put together all of the components that enable it to eventually be sustainable. And part of that is reusability. Tell me.
Reusability is fundamental. If you, a fully reusable vehicle will cost 100 times less per flight than an expendable vehicle.